All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, we're doubled up from our last one. We are trudging forward in memory of light and getting back on schedule with that. Heath wanted to backtrack a little bit into the parent section,
Mhm.
and then we start after that with Androl and Pavara. Going forward for me, that's 740. I can't remember what that was for you.
It's on the first edition hardcover, that's 671,
What
and then
edition is
we'll
this?
go up to some Rand and the Dark One stuff. um, yeah, so I had a thought when we were done last time of because I was still kind of hemming and hawing of I just I don't feel good. I don't really like these Fail and parent sections, and I can't always articulate why. With some of the parent stuff I can, we have talked about how he just really and I think a lot of it, the more I think about it, just may have to do with how comfortable he is writing Perrin versus Matt or any of the others. And so that may be one of the reasons the the parent there's too much parent and those parent sections go on longer than they need to is just because he's comfortable writing it. And he has said himself that was the easiest character to write. um, but then as I was thinking about it after we were done, that's what kind of hit me is, it's not exactly long. None of these sections in this huge chapter are long, but it's still twice as long as it really needs to be, because basically what's happening here is Bear Lane is telling Perrin stuff he doesn't know and he needs to know. Well, except the problem is we, the reader, already know it. This is all stuff we either know because we saw or we have been able to infer
Mhm.
what's going on with the battle. And so it's just not necessary, for one. And two, the real point of this whole section is the very end. The only uh actual kind of new thing that we get is the very end. And this is interesting because as he's falling asleep, um he thought, this is the very end of this section on page 670. For me, he thought, I'm falling asleep. Again, he saw the three paths before himself. This time, one led to ordinary sleep, another to the wolf dream while sleeping, the path he usually took, and between them a third path, the wolf dream in the flesh. So stop there for a second, because that's kind of a big effing deal, is that here in this moment between sleep and waking, if you've ever if you like to write, or you're working on a project or something like that, it's so frustrating when in that moment between sleep and wake, oh, I just had an idea, I need to remember this when I wake up, and you almost never remember it.
Mhm.
And I really think it is because that is our moment of maximum oneness, to use the Zen or the Buddhist phrase, right? It is because as you are fully relaxed, as you are drifting into the unconscious state, but there's still enough consciousness there. I think that is our most natural, to use the phrase we used with Perrin, instinctual moment. And that was what Perrin had to learn. And so now he is more able to instinctively know and act. And that's how he's able to learn this thing that somehow Slayer was taught or learned, and now he's learning it. That was the whole point of his training with Hopper in these past three books. Um, but then the next sentence is also important, because this is this is Perrin the builder, Perrin the thinker, Perrin why he's important to this story. Um, is he was sorely tempted, but in the moment He chose not to take that path. He chose ordinary sleep, as in a moment of understanding, he knew that his body would die without it. And I have to wonder if there's something in the notes that helped Sanderson write this or these sections of Perrin. And I referenced this when in Tam's point of view, when he was thinking about this of, yeah, it's going to eat at Perrin that he's not able to be here, but that's how war goes sometimes. And I talked about the Audie Murphy's autobiography last time, and there is a moment of that. There's a couple of moments of that in the biography, and you're going to want to go that overriding manliness, that overriding masculinity that says, no, I have a duty and I have brothers that I should be with, but there has to be that intellectual side that says, yeah, but you're going to do more harm than good. Yeah, you want to be there, and yeah, they need you, but they need the old you. They need the you before you were mentally and physically broken. You're not going to help anyone now. And I think it's a big deal that kind of gets lost in the fact that that section's about twice as long, I feel, as it needs to be. That, okay, Perrin's not done yet. We're going to see more of him here in this. We're finally almost done here. We're going to see more of him, but he knows he needs rest, which is a big deal if you go back to book 4, where he started. And, that great moment when he goes tumbling down the stairs with Fail because she's trying to talk sense into him. And the only thing that stops him really is the fact that he literally can't get up and walk.
Mm-hmm.
But he's too stubborn, stupid to take a step back and accept. Well, okay, this is really interesting. I hadn't made this connection yet until I started thinking out loud here. Is we're actually going to get an interesting Demandred moment here in a little bit, where we get a Demandred point of view, where one of the things that makes him different from who he was in the War of Power is that he doesn't like it, but he's finally able to say to himself and accept, I was second. Lews Therin was better than me in these things that mattered to me. And it
Mm-hmm.
grates at me, but I've accepted it. And that's kind of what makes him more dangerous now.
Yeah, especially since it seems like he worked on the things that he thought he could improve on, like his
Mm.
swordsmanship and and he thinks he has an advantage with the true power. I don't think he knows that Rand had been channeling that. I think the only person that does know is Moradin. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, there was something that he had that was akin to the rings, even if it had a different effect. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it can't remember. Has he given the staff to Taim yet? Or is that coming up in a few? Is that in the section you're
Staff?
talking about, or the sword? I mean,
No, 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 no.
okay, so
Yeah, that's later. He has a conference. The
it's in
Demandred
this
section
chapter. I
here.
know that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
problem is I read
The
this 3 weeks ago again, and then
the Demandred section that's coming up is the confrontation he has with Mahale, who gets too big for his britches, and Demandred says, lets him know, you may be one of the Forsaken, but you're still an infant.
mhm.
Don't push me. Don't push me, little man.
All right. So going to the next section, we got Andril and Pavara,
Hmm.
and one of my big notes here was actually, I'm trying to give Sando credit when he did a good job, and he actually does kind of capture what I called, we joked about orgasms before, but I called this a newlywed moment.
Hmm.
Yeah, where they were, he was like, "How'd you do that?" She's like, "I don't know, but it was great." And they're like, "Well, we should try that again."
Let's
and,
do that again.
and then my first gut instinct was in the middle of a battle. No, but then I thought back about my own experience as a newlywed. We were destitute, we were poor, we were stressed, I was working 3 jobs, she was in school and all these things, and we still found time in that stress to kind of have those moments together, and that
Hmm.
actually made it survivable in those moments. And so I was like, well, actually, you know what, maybe this is a micro version of that. This is a quick couple one-liners where they're finding this what neither of them have really had in their life, which is like love for another equal person in the world versus just love for family.
Yeah, credit where it's due. This is one of his better sections, especially when it comes to banter and humor,
Mm-hmm.
because he really makes this very fun and lighthearted, we need because this chapter is so heavy. I mean, we're about to get to some. Oh, the next section is such a gut punch. So you really need this moment of levity, and it's done so well. Um, but also this really human moment of oh yeah, do we need to get canceled? Yeah, we're definitely canceled here because right at the opening here, I love this um I love this exchange that they're having in their minds. They're having this telepathic exchange here. Andros sat up groaning. You know, Pavara, you are unusually smart-lipped for an Aes Sedai. He was surprised by her amusement. You don't know Aes Sedai nearly as well as you assume. And I had the thought of, or women in general for that matter, because we've talked about this a lot of how one of the things that makes the White Tower and the Aes Sedai so interesting, so compelling, but also in this modern age with the modern audience, why we have brought up, you know, young women ranting about how, yeah, the Wheel of Time is really good, but RJ is really problematic when it comes to how he writes women. Yeah, because I take a man and then I take away reason and accountability. But
He
but
only
it's
did that with Elaine, though. Really, really.
oh jeez, yeah. But no, it's he, he does. He takes a man, but then he makes them a woman. Or you take a woman and then you make him a man. It's
Which
we're
is
the
funny.
same, but we're different.
I think I had an epiphany this morning because one of the complaints we always talk about with difference between men and women and the cross-sex mind reading,
Hmm.
one of the things that women do, okay, so it's more of a feminine trait, so we'll use correct form of gender. It's more of a feminine trait to put thoughts in people's heads and make assumptions about what they're thinking when they're doing something. To
Which we're about
imply
to see with
intent.
Elaine here in a second. Oh, yeah.
And one of my clients, she was like, one of the people in her group wasn't there one day, and because she wasn't there the week before, when he came back in, she was like, "You skipped yesterday to get me back for not being here," and I thought it was a joke, but she was actually being a little serious. And we were like, no, this is what you do. You put thoughts in men's heads, and we kind of don't like that. Okay, so fast forward to this morning, I have another person in that same group. She brings her baby because I say no excuses. You just had a baby, you're still coming in. And so the baby's kind of in that blah blah blah, kind of making googie sounds and stuff. And there was a moment where mom and that other lady were like, "Oh, what do you need? Do you need this? Are you this? Are you this?" Da, 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 da. Well, of course, the baby can't talk, and even pointing is not always accurate with a
Oh, I see
baby.
where you're going. Yeah.
And I was like, maybe this is a spandrel. Maybe it's good motherly instinct to try to figure out the thoughts of the thing that can't communicate with you, and it just spills over to their relationships with their long-term partner.
Wow, that is an epiphany. Yeah. I that makes a lot of sense. They have to do that for like the first 2 years or even more because even once they can talk, I mean, they're talking nonsense and they don't know what they want because
Hmm.
they haven't lived enough to know what's what. It's sometimes they just get upset and they can't even when they can talk. It still takes a while for them to be able to tell you what's wrong because they don't know. They're just feeling weird things. It's like, what's going on here? You know?
And maybe it's just modernity where we're really getting to know about it because realistically, as couples, as married couples, go back just to the farming years, not even that far ago, 100 years ago, we didn't spend a whole lot of time together
Hmm.
as a married couple. You were out working in the field all day. She was doing the productive part of the raw resources you brought in and all of that. And then the Industrial Revolution happened. And all of a sudden, romance became a thing because we spend a lot of time together and we have to have other reasons to be together other than just we're a partnership to survive. And maybe that trait just wasn't noticed before because as a hunter gatherer, I was always on the hunt. I was always out raiding. I was always out doing this. As the farmers, we were, dawn to
Mhm.
dusk, and it was just too tired to worry about any BS after that. And we just all went to bed. And
I,
it's,
I I saw an interesting factoid the other day when I was scrolling through X, and someone had posted this meme that just blew my mind, and I told it to my wife, and she was like, I don't get it. That's still really old. And I'm like, this is the kind of stuff that this is why I love history, but also kind of puts things in perspective of what a young country the United States is. And so maybe you'll appreciate this because she sure didn't. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was a picture of a guy with an A's hat on and an A's uniform that was probably still the Philadelphia Athletics at that point. I don't think they'd moved to Oakland yet. And it was this guy is the last living player to have played under Connie Mack, who was one of the original managers when the MLB formed and managed for a ridiculously long time. And was one of the most successful managers ever in Major League Baseball. And the reason it blew my mind is here is someone who is still alive today who played under Connie Mack. Connie Mack was born during the Civil War. Connie Mack was born in 1862. And that blows my mind that here is someone alive who worked under someone who was born during the Civil War. And to me, that blows my mind. It goes, we think of that as ancient history, but it's not.
mm-hmm. Yeah, because someone born in the 40s would be 80, 80 something today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not that bad. So someone born in the 1860s could have been 80 that time. And you just go, yeah, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, you think about the arc of human history for how many hundreds of thousands of years Homo sapiens have been around, and our current world is the blink of an eye. It
Hmm.
has not been around that long.
Yeah,
To
and even large language models, not like AI large language models, but just complicated language models haven't been around even or have been around even less than that.
mhm.
Yeah.
And you have so the other interesting the where I was going with this because what I was thinking to your point about how long we have um genetically selected but also culturally reinforced certain things is that Pavara's point is you don't know Aes Sedai nearly as well as you think you do because this is how we are, but with each other.
Hmm.
It is something of a closed society. It's for a long time, women would get together while the men were working, whether in the factory or in the field, and they would get together with each other to do the household chores, to do which a lot of it was spinning, weaving, tailoring. For a very long time, clothes were made in the home.
Hmm.
And so you would get together as you're making clothes or fixing clothes and doing those kinds
Well,
of
they were made
things.
in someone's home because a lot
Yes.
of bartering went on,
A
depending
lot
on
of
what the
bartering
husband
went
did. Yeah.
on. And so you would get these groups of this is how you socialized. You socialized, men would socialize while they're at work. Women would socialize while they're in the home doing the housework. And so they would be they would be different because they would be themselves. They would be their most feminine because they're around other feminine. It's why locker room culture exists because it is, arch masculinity because there are no women around. It's just guys being guys. It's, we're busting each other's balls, that's we say it that way. Okay, last night I was laughing and cringing at the same time, and I texted you this, and my wife's, "Why are you such a bad person? That's awful." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I can feel his pain, and I can cringe, And I can also laugh hysterically. And if it happened to me, he would be doing the same thing, which is in the World Series game last night, the poor Yankees catcher caught a foul ball in a very delicate place. And on the review, on the replay, it was even worse than I thought, because for anyone who's never done it, if you play a contact sport or a combat sport, if you take a shot to the cup, it still hurts. It's just a lot better than taking a shot when you don't have a cup,
Hmm.
right? But it still hurts. The foul ball bounced underneath the catcher and then went straight up right behind the cup. So he caught a foul ball right in the taint.
Right on his
No
prostates.
protection, no
Yeah.
protection whatsoever. And I couldn't stop laughing, but also cringing at the same time, because that's what we do. And my wife is horrified because that is a very, very not feminine thing to do. No, no, they want to be empathetic. They want to make sure you're okay. They want to, but they still, can cut at each other and they can still cut up, but it's just different.
Well, I
And
always
that's
tell
what
my clients
Androl
when they're
doesn't
doing
get.
something stupid, I'm like, if X happens, we're gonna laugh. No, wait, let me take that back. We're gonna make sure you're not super hurt. If you're not super hurt, we'll laugh. And if you are super hurt, we'll wait till you're better and then we'll laugh.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And then you flip a couple of pages, and then we're definitely canceled here, because I love this whole exchange, which for me is on page 673, which um which starts with so they've kind of moved aside, and now they're talking out loud about, all right, what are we doing? What we were doing isn't working and is going to get us killed. So now we need a new plan. But in this back and forth, Androl has this thought. He smiled, light. How long had it been since he'd felt this way about a woman? Love was supposed to be something for young fools, wasn't it? Of course, the young fools never could see straight. They'd look for a pretty face and stop there. Andrel had been around long enough to know that a pretty face was nothing compared to the type of solidity a woman like Pavara displayed. Control, steadiness, determination. These were things that only proper seasoning could bring. It was the same way with leather. New leather was fine, but really good leather was leather that had been used and worn, like a strap that had been cared for over the years. And then I'm trying to read that thought. Pavar said, "Did you just compare me to an old strap of leather?" And then he goes on to compare her to an old tree. It's like, dig that hole, brother.
Yeah, but this is where it's a kind of okay on the banner because he is trying to introduce us to a new concept,
Mm-hmm,
which all of us would be very inept at maintaining in the beginning
mm-hmm,
of they bonded each other, so now they can kind of read each other's minds. That's not a good thing, especially with people you love sometimes, because
mm-hmm,
sometimes you have a thought which is like, God damn that bitch, and but you smile and you let the moment pass,
mm-hmm.
and then you don't feel that way as much later. And that's kind of how long-term relationships go. So we're in the newlywed phase. We'll see how this goes in the long run,
Well,
but
that's why I think the Androl Pavera dynamic is so good from the beginning, and becomes so fun and interesting, because to your point, it is like the newlywed phase. Because they are there. This is a very new but very serious relationship. But they're also both old enough and experienced enough, wise enough to have wisdom. So you kind of get
and to
both at
not
the
be as
same time.
volatile in emotion.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you get kind of um the fun instability of that, as Andrel says, young fools are the ones who fall in love, but then also that, as he thinks about it, solidity of a seasoned relationship, because you have seasoned people here.
Hmm.
So that's why it's so fun, but definitely cancelable, because that back and forth is such a great, this is what a good relationship is supposed to look like. This is what a good male female dynamic is supposed to look like. And I think Just thinking out loud here, I just had this thought of I wonder if the whole point of this Andro Pavara thing that Jordan was setting up, um, I think did Andro pop up in Knife of Dreams or was it in the first Sanderson book? I'm trying to remember where he first appeared. I think Jordan set it up in Knife of Dreams. Um, that where this was going was the ultimate example of what the Aes Sedai, the ancient Aes Sedai symbol is supposed to mean. That these people going forward into this new age, now that the taint has been cleansed, they're going to have to relearn what
Hmm.
it means, what that Aes Sedai symbol means. They're going to have to relearn how to live and work together, how to have a complementary relationship. And Androl and Pavara kind of accidentally stumbled in to kind of the perfect complementary relationship
Hmm.
because of this weird bond they now share. Any other thoughts on the Androl Pavara thing?
Nope.
Because then we go, oh,
Very slowly through this to Rourke.
what a gut punch. Again, credit where it's due. Uh, this is a wonderfully written scene. It's not great. It's not perfect, but it's really good. This is about as good, I feel like, as Sanderson writes action scenes. That he doesn't give us quite enough, but he also doesn't give us too much, which is generally what we complain about. Is
Hmm.
he gives us too much, but then doesn't tell us enough. It's just a lot of words, as opposed to Jordan, who's very economical with his words. But just the opening here is just so great. The valley of Thakhandar had become a place of smoke, mayhem, and death. Rourke stalked through it, Trask and Belder at his sides. They were brothers from the Red Shields. He had never met these two before coming to this place, but they were brothers nonetheless, and their bond had been sealed by the spilled blood of Shadow Spawn and traitors. It's such a great opening, just good prose, just well written. But then also, it's such a great opening because it so quickly and efficiently captures something that I'll bring it up again because I love it. Band of Brothers, but then in Murphy's autobiography, he talks about this about how hard the veterans are on the replacements because they kind of have to be because a replacement is dangerous because the replacement can get you killed because they don't know what the hell they're doing and what's going on
Hmm.
because they've never seen it before. But
Because they eat too many eggs before the game.
but once they've been bloodied and made it through that first test of fire, then that replacement mentality goes out the window and you're one of us. And then suddenly those guys are now doing the exact same thing to the new guys. And they may have only been there a month, but it was a hard ass month, you know? And so these new replacements that are coming in now, they're giving them the same hard time because once you have that baptism of fire, you're brothers. And so it's such a great opening. Um, but also these first couple of pages as Wark is going through, as he's narrating for you and telling you how badly the battle at Shalgul has gone, but that humanity is still holding. It doesn't look good and it's kind of turned into a chaotic mess, but they're still holding, they're still fighting. So he does a great job of keeping it small by being through Rourke's eyes and seeing the fighting he's doing personally, but then giving you a little bit of Rourke, the clan leader, the war leader, kind of scanning and looking and assessing what's going on in the larger battle. Um, and then the third thing it does is it really gets you. He does a great job of getting you inside Rourke's head and then punching you right in the gut when Grendel shows up, and you're like, oh no, not you. not Rourke. You can't do this to him. He's been here for so long and been beloved really from the very before we really well, you knew his name because we were introduced to him when he showed up to rescue the girls. But then when he encounters Matt has no idea who this guy is. When he
Mhm.
encounters Matt on the rooftops outside the stone, but we know, and we get to see very quickly. RJ shows us, oh yeah, this guy's a badass and a leader of men that is respected. And so, as we've said, one of his great talents, Jordan's, is to give you a new character, and almost immediately that is a fully fleshed out human being, not just a character in a story, not just words on paper.
Yeah, and
And
we don't simmer on it too long to where you forget because it's the beginning of book 4 of Shadow Rising,
mhm.
where he's in the meeting as the clan chief. So then now you've got all the little preliminary stuff you just talked about, and now it's like, oh, this guy's one of the big wigs.
He's a big effing deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's one of 12. So yeah, that's a big effing deal. Um,
Now,
but it
what one of the things about the way he goes too, that's an extra gut punch, and I don't know if you felt the same thing was we would be okay with Rourke dying. We're not
yes,
okay with
yes,
Rourke becoming a thrall.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's so harsh.
Hmm.
Because he doesn't go out in a blaze of glory. He doesn't go down swinging. Like just a second ago, one of those brand new brothers that he'd never met before has a moment of where work sees him go down, but he takes down the red veil that killed him. So, he died with honor, and Rourke doesn't get that. Rourke doesn't
Mm-mm.
get the chance to die with honor. But what I noted and I found interesting, and I'm wondering what your thoughts on this are, is notice how Grendel does this is she could kind of either literally weave the mirror of mist around her so she looks like her old self, or once she takes over the mind, the thrall could see what she wants them to see and could see her as she used to look. Instead, what she does is that, oh, I've never noticed before how even eyes are so gross. No, no, these uneven eyes and this thinning hair. Oh no, that's true beauty. I found that really interesting, and I don't know what to make of it, but it just jumped out at me as, huh? Because I feel like the normal thing would be what you see in The Witcher, where when what's her face goes through her transformation,
Hmm.
she all of them cover themselves in this illusion with this illusory magic that's real but not completely real, you know, of look how beautiful I am, look how awesome I am. The guy who doesn't actually have hands, you know, that kind of thing. You would think that would kind of be I think the first order thinking that most people would go for is, I want everyone to see me how I wish I was. And Grendel goes, no, I'm going to make everyone else gross.
Hmm.
Those standards of beauty. Oh crap! Did we just get canceled again? Is Grendel the ultimate fourth wave feminist here,
Yeah,
tearing
yeah, pretty
down the
much. I was
classical
that's the
standards
opposite
of
of getting
beauty?
us canceled because now we got a bunch of Grendel fans out there.
Um, yes, because she's totally in
Because
the right
remember,
here.
she's only this way because of the patriarchy. Morden did this to her. So,
That's a good point.
yeah.
Rand and Morden did this to her. It's all their
Yeah.
fault.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. She's totally in the right here. Beauty standards are totally gross. Is there a because the thought that jumped into my head is, not only is it just interesting because it's not what you would expect, but there's something interesting here I can't quite put my finger on about, because Grendel is the arch psychologist, and this is how she chooses to do things. I feel like there's
Well,
something
I would say
there.
there are two things there, And one of them is actually something you touched on. So that would be the second one I usually would mention, but since you already said it, I'll say it first, is the the bucking of internal bias based on socialization for beauty standards, right?
Hmm.
Which is biologically based, as we've contended that, most beauty standards are actually based on health indicators.
Hmm.
But the other one on if we were to analyze her is coping. It's a
Hmm.
coping mechanism. Because if she were to do it the other way, every time she saw herself for the real self, it would always be you either change it and can have constant reminders, or you just change your bias. You change your own perception of the world. This is how you overcome dissonance. You either change this was a test question. You either change your cognition, which is what she did, or you change the inputs that are coming into it. So you change the situation. So if you do something that is against your true nature, that's going to cause dissonance. So the dissonance is the discomfort that goes with it. Okay. Uh, and so there's two ways to stop that. You either change your cognition, you either say this is okay, and you convince yourself of it, or you change the situation by changing your behavior. Well, she can't change her situation.
Hmm.
So she's changed her own cognition as a
Hmm.
coping mechanism.
That's a good point. It's like I'm finally getting around to watching Quarterback on Netflix, which I think came out early last year, and it follows Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota through the 2022 season. Um, and there's a moment I really like Kirk Cousins. He's a really nice guy, and he's not a great quarterback, and yet he's still an underrated quarterback for the stats he has and what he's able to do. But there's a moment, and I think it's the second or third episode where I go, bro, no, where he rationalizes uh, a pick he threw that basically cost them a game early in the season of 2022. I don't remember against who, and because he says, you know, you try your best, and but sometimes you just get a bad bounce of the ball because the ball kind of bounces off Jefferson in the end zone and is able to be scooped up by a defender. Well, okay, you can rationalize it that way, but that wasn't a great throw. It wasn't a terrible throw, but it wasn't a great throw. Jefferson had the position and he has the athleticism that if you'd have high pointed that ball to the point where Jefferson was going to catch it or no one was going to catch it, you know, it shouldn't have hit Jefferson in the pads in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my last wrestling matches. That wasn't a pin. That was just a bad ref. And it wasn't. It was a bad ref. I shouldn't have been in that position in the first place.
Yeah,
I'm the one who let myself get on bottom with my back to the mat. I shouldn't have done that. I was the better wrestler.
CD Lamb finally said what everybody was lip reading that he said to Dak on the sideline, and it was exactly the same thing as Cousins. He told Dak, "Jump ball four, throw a jump ball four," and everybody made, of course, it was him cussing him out or something. But he
Mm-hmm.
threw a back shoulder throw and it got intercepted.
Mm-hmm.
Or CD Lamb was saying jump ball four, jump ball.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but no, not to derail us too much, but yeah, it is. It's that post hoc rationalization that goes into it. But she's
Yeah.
got to change her rationalization of the rest of her life too.
Well, and
And
she's also again
she's
the fourth
basically
wave,
convincing herself this is okay. I just got to work around.
and also back to the fourth wave feminist analogy is she also has to change all of society's rationalization.
Well, at least with her thralls.
At least, well, but in her mind is that's what she's going to do. She's going to make them all pay. That's basically what she says here at the end. Um, where is it? 677 for me is, um, yeah, this is her talking. When I'm through, nobody, or let me back up a second. And Moradin thinks this face a punishment. Well, you don't care what face I wear, do you, my pet? When I'm through, nobody will. Morden himself will praise my beauty, for he will see through eyes that I grant him, just like you, pet, just like you. You know, that's her way of taking over the world, contrasting with Demandred's way of taking over and remaking the world.
Which is funny because she just evolved to use compulsion as beer goggles.
Yep.
Hopefully, it doesn't go
Uh
with the whiskey dick. Well,
uh um
moving forward, because we've gone a whole six
moving forward.
pages. Yeah, in,
Yep.
in an hour.
Uh so we get to Rand and the Dark One again. This is where we left off. Rand was kind of taking control and taking these threads of what if and what might be, and he was going to spin his own reality. And he's um he spins out this utopia of what might be if he accomplishes what he really wants to do, which is destroy the Dark One. And here you have an Emmons Field that is a utopia. Everyone's happy. Um, the Emmons Field, the Two Rivers people are now craftsmen who work with the Ogier and even rival their work. So that's what they're sought after for. Um, but I also had this thought of, and maybe I'm reaching here, but I feel like this kind of justification of utopia, this justification of no pain, no tragedy that is going through Rand's mind. I almost wonder if RJ is echoing what I've often said when we've talked, which is I hate the way some Christians, way too many, try and console people after a tragic loss with the it's all God's plan. Don't tell someone that who's just lost a child.
Hmm.
That doesn't help. That just makes it worse.
Yeah, that I mean, I have my opinions about that, which we've talked about at length before, but I think he was going actually more for the like a jab at the communist utopia
Hmm.
because going towards the end of this section, he says your paradise is flawed,
Hmm.
adversary. And what Rand created was, as I keep hammering, an absence of the natural evil. But the Dark One points out to him, people are still murdered in the night. People are still swindlers. People are still power hungry. People are
Hmm.
still all these things. You just created Ordeth's dream. This is this
Yeah.
is this is the communist utopia. This is the we have overcome nature.
Yeah. Where is it? Yeah, I'm looking for that. The dream is flawed because it's a great section because what the you focused in on the dream is flawed. To me, my focus was more on that first line. It is not enough and will never be enough. Your dream is flawed. Your dream is a lie. I am the only honesty your world has ever known.
Mhm.
And that made me wonder. I didn't have time. I was going to go down a rabbit hole and look up the Dark One's true name, Shaitan, is obviously the most obvious connection there is Satan.
Mhm.
But I think there's also a Hindu something there. If I recall from reading way back in the day, that there's a either it was either a Near East or a Hindu thing that was there was that name was also kind of a derivative of. But um, to me, it's just
The
more
Hebrew shaitan or shaitan,
that okay. That's what it was.
which
The
is the
Hebrew,
Arabic word usually referring to devil.
right? Um, but it's not just the name. To me, what's more interesting is the conception of what the devil is, which is that um the father of lies, the deceiver, but the way evil deceives. I mean, going all the way back to way back when we were doing Sunday school episodes and the fall of man and the temptation of Eve, the serpent didn't straight out lie. He just said, "Hey, did God really say, you know, and why? why would God do that? Because he's jealous. And doesn't want you to be like him. And if you eat this, you'll be like him, which is kind of true, from a certain point of view. And there's also a great it's so similar to Tolkien's allegory of the devil, which is Sauron. And if you go on the deep dives of what happened before the Lord of the Rings, when he showed up as Anatar the Deceiver, which is how he
Yeah,
helped
Rings
craft
of
the
Power is
rings.
helping me with
Please
this
stop.
story.
Please, no, don't. Oh, the pain. Um, there is one of the channels I watch is called Little Platoon, which is a reference to John Locke, and which is how I noticed him in the first place. I was like, oh, hey, this is interesting. But he's doing a deep dive um on Rings of Power, and I believe his degree was in literature, and he worked as a journalist for a time, and is now actually a writer for a video game company. I don't know which one because he hasn't said, but he really goes in depth on the actual source material, and how much depth there is in the way Tolkien wrote Sauron as a deceiver, and it gave me this thought of, this is why the dark has home field advantage and why the light is always having to fight an uphill battle. Because back to where I started with the thing I hate about, oh, it's all God's, stop that. The light, if you're going to be honest and if you're going to be true, you have to live in reality. And that means you have to acknowledge both the good and the evil, both the good and the bad. That even if it's not evil, which there's an intention there, bad shit happens all the time.
Hmm.
We talk about nature is metal. It's you're just walking along minding your own business, and all of a sudden you get attacked by a mountain lion. Well, crap. That's just crap happens. You know, you go out fishing, and then out of the blue, because this can happen when you're on the water, and it's scary as heck if you've ever been in it, and you get a squall that just comes up out of nowhere, and you are in Mother Nature's hand, and she don't care.
Or even in human hands, there was a guy named Adolf Hitler, and lots of people died to eliminate the what we considered the greater evil. I think
Hmm.
history
Hmm.
reinforces that,
Hmm.
right? And so, yeah, lots of bad things happened for the greater good in that case, including shaking hands with other evil people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Uh, put a pin in that because we're going to go even further down this train of thought later as Rand and the Dark One continue to go back and forth. Because this ends with the Dark One breaking down Rand's uh mirror world that he's created. And now he's gonna do his own thing, and this back and forth is gonna continue. Um, but for the moment, right after that, I had this thought of, I don't think this was an accident, and maybe I'm reading too much into it. And if this was a note from Jordan, or if it was completely him, kudos for Sanderson for what and how he writes this. But I feel like the very next paragraph after this back and forth with Rand and the Dark One is a practical metaphor for this existential idea that is being explored with Rand and the Dark One, which is we get a Sylviana point of view, which is pretty cool. And we get her thinking about the one power. Sylviana held the one power, felt it flooding her, lighting the world. When she held Saidar, she felt as if she could see all. It was a glorious feeling, so long as she acknowledged that it was merely a feeling. It was not truth. The lure of Sidar's power had coaxed many a woman into foolhardy gestures. And I love the snarky little line at the end of certainly many blues had made them at one point or another. Just reminding us Sylviana is a good red, but she's still a red.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I feel like that's not an accident because that's basically what this back and forth between Rand and the Dark One was all about on a bigger meta level. And now here you have it seems fantastical because she's using magic, but really what she's using is power. You know, uppercase P power in this fantasy world, but lowercase p just the power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Why? Because of what Sylviana just said here.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have this feeling of invincibility, this feeling of omnipotence, of I am a lowercase g god, but you're not. It's just a feeling. Reality is still out there. You know, perception is reality. No, perception is your reality. 2 + 2 still equals 4. Uh, do you have any thoughts on this? Any notes on this section? Because I don't again until the very end here.
Yeah, nothing major, just the back and forth on having trying to get her to pass the bond because
I
she's trying to be rational. And
I loved that moment because that
mm,
is so in keeping with what we see when we first see Sylviana from Jordan in the last several books that he wrote. When she shows up, and then when she her interactions with Egwene that make both of them that elevate both of them so well, that is perfectly in keeping with her. But then also a pretty good moment for Egwene to say no. You know, whatever comes, this is my burden, my bond. He's my warder, my husband. I'm not passing this off.
well,
Practicality be damned.
and this is we always talk about Gawain Rand parallels. This is the opposite of Hard Rand
Mm,
because Hard Rand was don't let anybody see any ties to me that could be seen as a weakness and all of these things.
mm,
And she's saying, let me keep this weakness because what is life worth without it?
it's a good point. I did have one little thought at the end here of um the way Sylviana is thinking about Gawain as this is happening. You know, the line she uses at the end is the shadow didn't need to fell the Emerald herself to stop her. It just had to kill one idiot boy. Is does Sanderson not like Gawain as much as I thought he did, or is this just
I think it's
Sylviana
just
being Sylviana?
yeah, I think it's staying in character.
I think more likely what it is that it is we're getting behind her eyes to justify from her point of view or explain to you the reader why from the very beginning when we got Gawain points of view, he's always kind of uncomfortable around Sylviana because Sylviana clearly doesn't like him. And I think this is just explaining why. And she's not wrong,
But
from
she's
her
also
point of
not
view of what
completely
most important.
right.
Exactly.
But
Which
it's
is
yeah, it's consistent with character though. So something doesn't have to make sense from a meta level. It just has to make sense from that person's point of view level.
exactly. All right. So then we move to Elaine. Um, I thought this was pretty darn good. This back and forth between Elaine and Brigitte, for a couple of reasons. One, like I said earlier, um, in contrast to the parent section, he doesn't belabor the point. He gives us this good personal moment. We've had a few of these of stepping away from all the big battle. I mean, like we just left a big uh a big battle scene with what the White Tower is doing. And now, even though Elaine is sitting here overseeing the even bigger part of the battle, which is the Andorran army trying to hold off the Trollocs as they're running across the now dammed up river, but he doesn't focus on the battle. The battle is just background. And what matters is the personal moment here of it's all gone. The all I remember is waking up here in the real world with you and Nynaeve.
Hmm.
Everything I know about who I used to be is all just stories. I only remember it because I remember talking about it. I don't remember that like a real memory. Um, and the attempt at rationalization of, hey, how can I miss something I never knew? But Elaine, I mean, you the reader know, man, no, that's rough. And Elaine can feel,
Well, we
no,
got
that
a
hurts.
contrast because we see Grendel coping very well, actually, and Birgitte trying to cope but not doing a great job of it.
But
Or maybe she is doing a good
yeah,
job of it, and Elaine is just misreading her, and this is on Elaine.
or doing as good a job as can be expected,
Hmm.
right? Of, you know, it makes me wonder how Jordan would have written this scene because, in essence, what she's dealing with, I mean, I don't know what you would classify this as, but to me, that's kind of a PTSD thing. You've had a serious trauma, you
Well, I
got,
mean, all coping from trauma is a PTSD reaction. So
okay.
with PTSD, we just know it famously from
Mm.
wartime stuff. But I mean, it is kind of a general term. I wish we had a separate term because I've dealt with people that are like, yeah, I have PTSD, and I'm like, from what? You middle class, whatever. They're like, I moved high schools. Okay, yeah, for a
So the same
15-year-old girl, that's a
mechanism.
little bit traumatic, but at the same
Yeah.
time, we need a separate term for that. But it
So,
is
so
on, so PTSD is a spectrum just like everything else.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
psychologically, it's the same mechanism, but it's a little bit different than getting
Yeah.
blown up by an IED.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which is funny because PTSD is heavily linked to a uh, malfunction in memory
Hmm.
and memory placement where you can't separate okay, so we'll go to war again. uh the memory of the event goes to your limbic system instead of your prefrontal cortex. And so it makes things like cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure therapy very difficult to handle the situation because the boom still just goes straight to the limbic system instead of being boom firework now, not boom mortar.
All right. We just said, well, because we paused there for a second, pulling back the screen, pulling back the curtain here. We paused for a second there, and we were just talking about how we need to move faster because we haven't covered a lot of ground, and we've been rambling for an hour here. And now you've just sent me down a rabbit hole because you just gave me an interesting thought of,
Okay, make it as quick as possible, and if we decide we can do a whole episode on it, we'll do it on a social episode.
is Tam the World War II vet and Rand slash kind of sort of the avatar of the author Jordan, the Vietnam vet?
Hmm.
Because we a lot of people tend to think that PTSD is a new thing and it was a was a thing of the Vietnam era vets. No, the World War II guys suffered it too, and they didn't. It's not as well known, but they talked about it, they wrote about it, but they coped better, I think, because they coped differently. Tam had plenty of PTSD, but it's just buried back there. I mean, we see a little bit of it the couple of times we get Tam points of view when he's thinking about warfare and what it does to people. But he had an infant he had to take care of. He had a farm that required work, constant work. He had ways to keep himself productive and needed that helped keep it at bay.
Okay, so there's a major hypothesis that goes away from that actually has a lot of biological uh plausibility. In World War II, they went over on a boat,
Mm-hmm,
and after the combat, they came back on a boat
mm-hmm,
all together.
mm-hmm.
And as modernity happened, the trip back was quicker because they came back on
Well,
planes and helicopters. So basically, on the boat back, what they're the hypothesis is that it was it was group therapy with people who have been in the same situation.
Exactly. But it was more than just the boat because even before they got on the boat, they were in assembly areas.
Yeah.
Some of them for months before they could even get on that boat, which then took weeks to get back home.
So
And then
there
once you
are
get back to the States, you're on a train for days to get back, to get closer to home. So
so
there
there are
was a long
there are a
period of
lot of
time.
people working with group therapy models to see how that works, in it and kind of trying to randomize it as much as possible with prospective cohorts, because ethics in this is really hard, because if you think you have a good idea, to rob the control group of that good idea is an ethics concern. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if your idea is wrong, to put a group in your idea group is also an ethics concern. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should be a little more loose on that, because you'll never know if you never test it. But yeah, a lot of people are trying to do work on that now, and that's kind of the big area of research. And so far, the preliminary findings are that it might have been the correct answer to it all, because there was a transitionary period where you're no longer in the combat, but you're with the other people that were in the combat, and it's like it's basically war versions of AA meetings all the way, right? So
Well,
it's
I wish I could remember because we mentioned a couple of charities last time that we both like and know enough about to feel good donating to and telling other people to donate to. There's another one. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I feel like it's someone that I was introduced to through Mike Rowe. I think he may have interviewed him once. But there's a combat vet who runs a charity, and they primarily focus on wounded, especially those who have lost limbs or been paralyzed or that kind of thing. And their methodology is to get these people with their families, and they get them out in the wilderness. They go camping basically. Of, hey, you can't do all the things you used to do, but let's put you in a similar environment with people who know what you've been through and without the trauma. And that's kind of their methodology. So it's a charity that is its whole purpose is to get vets and I don't know, always or sometimes with their families as well, out into these situations where you get away from real life and you get back into something that's similar to what you did when you created that bond with your fellow vets, put you back in that situation, but in a healthier healing mode,
and then
which
all
I
you need
think
is a
is
bear.
pretty brilliant. There's probably a few of those.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, so we got Brigitti
where
dealing with
was
it,
I?
then we go to
Oh,
Gallad.
oh, oh, yeah, and then Gallad, and I referenced this earlier when we were talking about chicks, man, and this moment when he comes up and uh he makes a good point about, I assume it would be completely futile to inform you how inappropriate it is for a woman in your condition to be on the battlefield. He's not wrong, and his concern is for his sister. That's not a bad thing. But Elaine is also right. So initially, you have this good moment where they're both right, but Elaine is more right, which is, if we lose this war, Galad, my children will be born into captivity to the Dark One if they are born at all. I think fighting is worth the risk. True. So long as you refrain from holding the sword personally. Also a good point. But then we get this thought by Elaine, which would be funny if she hadn't become so insufferable in the last kind of almost half of the series, maybe last third. Um, the words implied that he was giving her permission to lead the troops. No,
Hey,
the
trick.
words the words could imply that, but she of all people should know because she's kind of said it herself. Galad doesn't think like that.
Mm-hmm.
No, he says what he believes to be true, and he does what he believes to be true. That's why he annoys you. From the very beginning, when she first talked about Galad, before we actually met him as a character, that is what she warned about why he's bad, why he's annoying, is because he will always do what he thinks is right, no matter the cost to him or anyone else, which can be a bad thing, but is also an understandable and noble thing. And so you of all people should know that, yeah, from someone else, that could be an implication of permission, but that's just Gallad being Gallad. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, that was like the paper I brought up during the Harris one with the scissoring guys meme. The it
Why'd you
was
have
the
to bring
paper
that up?
that was about benevolent misogyny, because
Yeah.
anything we did nice was just giving women permission to do the thing
Mm-hmm.
and what they can do, and it was just goading them into all this stuff. And I'm like, you remember that commercial with the bodybuilders where the guy goes, I bought through a protein shake. I have a protein
Protein.
shake. And they're like, oh, I like protein too. I like protein too. And they basically kind of go into this like protein, protein. That's what I hear from the woke educational establishment people when I hear patriarchy now. It's like in the patriarchy, da, 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 and now it's like this to me. It's just like a patriarchy, patriarchy. It's like they got a tick now. Patriarchy, patriarchy,
Majority. All right.
patriarchy.
Any other thoughts on this? Um,
His thoughts on killing women.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so,
I
so
was
that one
wondering.
jumped out at me because this is where, yeah, we've got to find a balance between evolutionary morality versus actual rationalization. This is the Peterson versus Harris debate.
Mm,
Because if you go by Sam Harris the way he acts like he is, not the way he's been acting, the way he writes like he is, Gallard's right. This
yeah.
is the moral landscape. There are evil people. That's a peak to kill that woman who's killing lots of men because she wields the one power,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I mean, that's what started that because he got the medallion and everything. And could he
Mm-hmm.
kill women? And he's just like, well, I can because I've realized that. Now, my other thing is the misuse of the word gender, and this is the first time you see the word gender in all of these books. Thank you, Sando, for ruining it all. They didn't have.
Yeah.
Oh, we had one transgender, Halima, but other than that, I mean, Gallad wouldn't know about that. But so yeah, this is male and females the world, and
Well,
they
I
did
give
the
it a pass because the word sex is sometimes people don't like to say that word out loud, even if it's not in any way sexual or titillating. It's just, oh no, you
but
said
he
sex out
could have
loud.
said the light not judge one based on if they're a man or a woman,
Yeah,
which is how Jordan would have wrote it, I think, because he
probably.
made a lot of similar
It
statements in that direction.
it actually makes me wonder. I wasn't gonna harp on this, but where we're going to stop is another Rand Darkwan scene. And Rand has this thought that the Dark One doesn't have a gender, and that made me go, did Sanderson insert this here, or did he actually write this scene? Because up until then, all of those moments, I really felt like were wholly or mostly written by Jordan himself.
Hmm.
And I've talked about why that makes sense to me. And that made me stop and go, hmm, this section kind of feels like maybe Sanderson tweaked with it a bit more than the
Well,
others.
I'm sure there's some of that because he might have paraphrased a few things to clarify. Like maybe Jordan wrote something, but I mean he technically was kind of writing in a rush and
Uh-huh.
something an edit like tweaked it in a way an editor would.
Mhm.
Like take like 5 words and try to make it into two sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. And then we,
Go to Matt. Uh, Now I did have an interesting thought here, and don't want to derail, but it is an interesting thought that jumped. This is one of my more interesting thoughts, I think, uh, when we talk about psychoanalyzing the characters in the Sanderson versions. Do you want to go anything like at the beginning of Matt's part?
I only had one comment really about both of these next two sections. There's this short section on Matt and then this longer section from Min's point of view.
Okay, so is it in Min's point of view or Matt's? But it's when he spots the gray man.
He spots the gray man at the very end of his section.
Okay, so seven.
And then the actual fighting is from Min's point of view.
Okay, so yeah, so when he spots the gray man, uh, just the background on that, he's in there with Logain and all of these people, and the gray man comes in, and this is one of several times that Matt spots a gray man.
That's a good point.
And you're kind of like, oh, he's Talvaran or whatever, and you're thrown off by that. But Perrin hardly ever, Perrin doesn't do it. Rand doesn't do it. All of these other people don't do it, but Matt seems to be able to spot a gray man. But we're talking,
Perrin does it in The Dragon Reborn because he smells them
yes, yes. Oh, that's right, in the inn.
in the inn. Yeah, when they
Yeah,
have the fight, there are several
where he
gray men
breaks the
actually
legs off
there.
the chair and beats the hell
Uh-huh.
out of him. Yeah. That was a cool scene. I liked that scene.
Yeah.
But no, but Matt seems to be able to spot gray men like no one else. And I was thinking of personality traits, and I was like thinking of personality trait openness, which is the one we gave him as his number one.
Hmm.
And I was like, that would make sense that you're just more aware of your surroundings and you're going to be able to spot something that's supernaturally hard to spot better than everybody else.
But also not just spot, but then have your brain make the connection.
Hmm.
Because what's supposed to happen with the gray man is he's
Well,
just
and
part of
he's
the
and
background.
he's a pattern guy. He's a pattern guy, so he saw something in. I mean, I guess we were using the wheel of time, the pattern of the room that didn't fit.
Mm.
It was like those puzzles where there's like X's all the way through, but there's one cross in there and you're supposed to spot it. But it's actually really hard for a lot of people to get rid of
Your
all the other
your
X's.
eyes
Yeah.
just get sucked into the pattern and they just start to see it. It's like when you start to see the car you bought everywhere
Yeah.
suddenly.
But some people are just able to, oh, there's the X right there. Or when they rearrange letters and words, but you read the sentence as it was supposed to be. But
Not
I
a
actually
sailboat, it's a schooner. I can never see the schooner. I have never seen it once in those stupid pictures.
Yeah, and we did some of these in class in cognitive where it was two pictures and it would be a flash and something would be changed about the picture and you were supposed to figure out what it was. And because the flash was in there, it's really hard for the brain to figure out what was missing or what was added to the picture. And so some people are better at that than others. And I think Matt is just one of those. I guess that wasn't too much of a tangent because I think that said it all. It
Yeah.
was just an interesting little thing that jumped out at me, and it was
Hmm. And
seven.
he does a pretty good job here of what I didn't like about that parent section we ended on last time of Matt's section here is basically all set up. It's set up for something bigger that's coming later, which he hints at with that kind of unspoken back and forth they have when he locks eyes with Tuan of and he tells you what he's doing. He's trying to feign a break between him and the Sanchin because he knows there's a spy here and he wants Demandred to think the Sanchin are off the board, right? So he tells you what he's doing, but then the other setup is this fight that happens here. Is so the section's all set up, but it's none of it is unnecessary, and it's all pretty tightly written. So credit where it's due for that part. And then the actual fight, I like that we switched to Min. Um, Partly because I think it helps Sanderson write the action scene better because she's less involved directly. And so it's I think we would kind of get lost in the action if we were with Matt. But also the other reason he needs to switch to Min here is because Sawan shows up. And my only note for this section is what a freaking arc for Sawan of where she started when we first saw her in the second book, and now where we are here with her end in book 14, and the way she's so imperious and unlikable when we first meet her. Even if you respect her as a leader, she's not likable. And then when we get to know her more, uh, as we see more of her when Matt and the girls go to the White Tower, when Min shows up at the White Tower, all of these things, she's not a very likable character, even if she's a respectable character. But then when her arc culminates, the Swan Brine storyline, and I think I harped on this a while back when I was griping about what's wrong with the Gawain Egwene storyline. That that tale of the tragic love story of these two is practically perfect. It's what I think so many of the fans are frustrated with Gawain and with Egwene individually and together, is because we never get that. And so much of the setup with them seems to be what that was supposed to be. But this is, I mean, you feel the feels with this when Min tries to stop her, tries to send her away of, no, I told you twice. I told you you were going to have to be together twice
Mm-hmm.
or you were going to die. And I think you get from Sawan's reaction that she knows this is a suicide mission. She knows, oh, doesn't matter. I'm going in. What matters is saving Tawan and Matt. Matt especially. Matt is our general. If Matt goes down, this battle is lost. We're going in. So to have that very human moment, but then have that very heroic moment. The only thing I don't like is how she kind of gets killed off screen. Either I missed it or she gets killed while Min isn't paying attention. And I kind of get the technical reason why you would do that, because you want that shock. And maybe he just didn't write it well enough of Min turning around to say, okay, Sawan, time to go. And she's lying there, just blank eyes, staring up the ceiling, dead.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh no, he
assume
doesn't
that's
give
why you
any
do.
yeah, he doesn't give any
Yeah.
description of it. Yeah.
You don't get a hint that she got blasted by a fireball and she's dead until Min turns around to say, okay, time to go. And she's done. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but the setup of her death is just, you know, one of the best in the series. And so much, I mean, again, why we're doing this is because the show doesn't work, because the show tries to have payoffs without setting up, or it has setups with a wimpy or nothing payoff. This has been set up since book 2. Sawan's arc, her as a person, and then even before book 2, because in the middle of all this, he writes a prequel where we get to see even more of her in New
Mm-hmm.
Spring, and where she came from and why she's the way she is. You know, it's a tragically wonderful or wonderfully tragic moment of literature. So credit where it's due to Jordan and Sanderson, because Jordan set it up, but Sanderson had to, you know, all right, Jordan drove the field, and now Sanderson's got to come in and make that last second field goal, and he did. He put it through the uprights.
Yeah, I mean, with all the buildup with Swan from book two, it was like a 20-yard field goal.
Hey, but those have been muffed before.
All right. So then we get a little Egwene. I don't have anything on that. Oh, this is where we find out Brian just runs off and dies. And
Um, Actually, no, we don't see Brian yet because it's Brian's not there. He's with Elaine. Remember, he shows up at the end of the
oh
Elaine
yeah, yeah,
section.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this is her feeling Gawain slipping away. And well, not to get sidetracked and harp too much because we've harped on it, but we should be feeling we we should be doubling down on what we just felt because of the end of Sawan, and we haven't seen it yet, but we know this is also the end of Brine. Because now that she's gone, he's gonna do the warder thing. We should be feeling that same thing. This should be doubling down. Sometimes you want that comic relief to let the audience breathe before you hit them again, but sometimes you want to go harder. You want to double down and follow up with an even stronger punch. And that should be what's happening here in this very brief moment as Egwene is fighting so desperately to get to him. but they're just kind of crawling foot by foot, through this difficult battle, and she can feel him slipping away, and she's starting to have that emotional moment of I'm not going to make it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, come on, let's move on. Oh, hey, Demanded point of view. This will be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So uh but Demanded point of view is interesting. So I assume you have thoughts, um, because you always do with the Forsaken especially. And we get a good meaty chunk here of several pages of first Demandred as himself, and with this moment with this woman that in a lot of ways kind of mirrors what's going on with Androl and Pavara, but from a darker point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we get Taim showing up, and then we get a different part of Demandred that is, oh man, this guy's scary. So I really love this section.
Just funny because the whole interaction to me with was that little sidebar meeting during Congress when Nancy Pelosi came down on AOC and and the uppity young woman was put in her place by the old experienced woman. And I was that was like that was the first thing that came to my mind while I was reading Demandra. Just put Taim in his place.
On a practical little side note here, there is something interesting when Taim shows up. For me, it's on page 696. Well, he has this thought beforehand when Taim shows up. So again, setup and payoff. There's this little setup here because Taim shows up traveling with the true power. And Demandred has this thought of how much is the Dark One letting people use his power? How many people are being given permission to use this power? And then a little bit down the way, when he puts on the true power shield, which we find out is the life-sucking device from the Princess Bride, and oh crap, which makes sense for the Dark One's power, that's the way it would act. That, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that, ooh, wow, okay. But then, um, as he draws in this orb of true power, there's this line, tiny spider cracks spread out. So just drawing in that much of the true power is creating these cracks into nothingness. I think that's confirmation of what we were postulating on an episode or two ago, that I think even the Dreadlords, not just the Forsaken, I think even the Dreadlords are being allowed to channel at least some of the true power,
Hmm.
because much bigger cracks open up when he unleashes that true power into this gigantic bar of balefire. But they showed up just by channeling it. So it's not just the balefire. The true power itself is unraveling reality. So I did find that little practical tidbit interesting. But my one big note here is the second page of this scene where he's thinking. So we see the aftermath basically of the Sharan attack on Matt, because they show up and they say, we failed, we didn't get him, he escaped.
Mm-hmm.
We destroyed his command tent, we killed many of his channelers, but he himself escaped. Did he channel? Did he show himself? No. And so he's annoyed because he still can't know for sure if Cawthon is just Luz Theron in disguise. And he has this thought that is very true and very interesting. Um, Crap, where'd it go? Um, the more Demandred maneuvered against the enemy general, the more he believed that Luz Theron was here, is the start of this paragraph. Um, it would be very like Luz Theron to send a decoy north while coming to fight this battle himself. So basically, I think it's more closing that plot hole that I talked about of, so Demandred knows what's going on, that there is a battle going on at Shal Ghul, but somehow he doesn't know that Rand has actually entered Mount Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so presumably what he thinks is going on is that Luz Theron is trying to win these battles, control these battlefields, and then he will confront the Dark One, which makes sense from Demandred's point of view because I feel like that's what Demandred would do. The way, from what we've seen of him and the way he thinks and the way he generals, it makes sense to me that if Demandred were the hero, which he is in his own story and he thinks he should have been all along, if Demandred was the dragon, that's the way he would probably do it. But the interesting line here is Luz Theron had difficulty letting others fight for him. He always wanted to be doing everything himself, leading every battle, every charge if he could. That one sentence, Luz Theron had difficulty letting others fight for him. That is a big effing deal in a very short sentence
Mm-hmm.
because it was true. That was Rand for a long time. But this is what Rand talks to Perrin about when he's talking about and Perrin asks him, so you remember all these things, so are you or are you Luz Theron? They have that nice moment there before the little conference at the Fields of Merilor. And Rand talks about how he's different and why he's different and no, I'm him, but I'm also me. And the fact that I'm me is what's important here because Luz Theron is now Rand and Rand has Matt and Perrin.
Mm-hmm.
Those two specifically, they're kind of the avatars of all of these people that Rand has that he can depend on. Because he also has Egwene, he has Nynaeve, he has Moiraine back.
Well, I was gonna say he's got three girls too.
Yeah, he's got the three girls and more because he's got Moiraine back and he can lean on her. He can depend on her. Tam, he has all these people and he has finally realized I can rely on these people. I have to rely on these people. And these people that make the whole of my life, that's what matters. That since that's what I'm fighting for, I have to let them fight and I have to trust them. So that is where Demandred's fatal flaw is because he, like all the Forsaken, I think we get hints that Lanfear has finally figured it out, but the others don't believe her because there are a couple of times where one or the other of the Forsaken will have a thought of how Lanfear says he's different now, and they just can't see it or won't see it, and that's ultimately where his fatal flaw is here in being so certain that Luz Theron has to be here, has to be pulling the strings himself. Well, yes, but he's not Luz Theron anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is actually the October surprise for Rand is that everybody's expecting him to fight like Luz Theron,
Mm-hmm.
including the Dark One himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. There is when he first walks into that cave, there is this kind of moment of surprise. Um, Moradin doesn't seem surprised though, so I think maybe Moradin gets it.
I think Morden gets Rand better than Morden gets the Dark One,
Hmm.
where he, yeah,
He's had the most time with Rand, that's for sure.
yeah,
I mean, eh, but then also, I think Alon the philosopher would have an easier time grasping this same but different idea
mm-hmm.
than anyone else.
Well, and he would also, again, being a pattern brain kind of guy, which is you have to be a philosopher, is he would grasp onto the thought that what would be the weakness, what would be the thing that changed everything. And I think he saw a lot of possibilities, and he clung to the one of we can make everything end. But he also end in the nihilistic way. But he also missed the one where it was, oh, the last battle could be fought differently by a different person with a different
Hmm.
personality.
Hmm. Um, One last thought here, and then the last section I don't have much on. I like the way it ends because I think it just adds extra power to Demandred as a person, as a character, because he has this thought as he sends time away, as he says, "Go fight your battle, just stay out of my way." And he has this thought where basically he's thinking, "I really hope I don't have to kill you," even though he recognizes how powerful he is and how much he hates Demandred. I love that because that's like, I'll use another sports analogy. There's this moment in the show Quarterback where Mahomes is saying, "I think we match up better with, but I want to play these guys." And that's really the mark of a true champion, a true competitor. Of this is why what's his face Mayweather gets so much crap, as he's got all these victories, but look at the people he didn't fight in his prime. How long did he go ducking Pacquiao in his prime? Whereas the real fighters, no, no, I want that guy. I want to go up against him because he's the best. And how am I going to prove I'm better if I don't take on the best? And so there's an element of that there of, I'm not going to be afraid of you. I know you're powerful, but I'm confident enough that if you come at me, I will take you down. So I'm not gonna hope you get injured before the finals. No, no. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's meet up in the finals. All right. And then short section with Rand and the Dark One starting that starts with I will win eventually. Um and Rand kind of going a little bit crazy because he has this feeling of how long had he been in this place? 1,000 years, 10,000. Um, which actually a thought I had back in the first section of something that's got to be hard for Rand to keep his own mind is not just the lack of time and space here that he's having to deal with, but I had this thought when he's weaving out this mirror world. Um, there's this kind of throwaway line that made me go, wait a minute, because he talks about how there isn't war, except there is peacekeeping. His words, peacekeeping missions in Shara, which made me go, wait a minute. Does Rand know about Demandred and what he did there and what's going on? And then I kind of thought, well, actually, yeah, he would have to because he's able to read the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much of his first, when he first gets into this place and he's trying to keep his mind from losing his mind, I wonder how much of that was he is basically seeing all that is and was and will be. The human brain cannot handle that vastness of knowledge. So actually, yeah, he probably does know everything about Shara and what Demandred is doing and what's going on here. And he's just trying to, keep it all compartmentalized and only focus on what he needs at the moment. Because if he tries to look at it all at once, he'll just fry his brain.
Yeah.
Whereas the Dark One, the interesting bit to me here is, and this is the part where there's a gender comment that makes me go, who's writing this? But uh, da, 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 da. There's also this nice Matrix moment which kind of tells you that Rand is getting better at being in this place, which is Rand stared at the pattern, resisting the Dark One's attack. He did not move or breathe. Breath wasn't needed here. I like the little Matrix moment there. Okay, but there's this line here.
There is no spoon.
Yeah, exactly. The Dark One touched the pattern, unable to take it and destroy it, but able to touch it. And so it tells you a lot about the nature of the Dark One and what constrains it. Its limitations. It incredibly powerful, incredibly dangerous, very able to exert its will and what it wants on the pattern, but not able to fully take it or destroy it. Um, which is great because um I was listening to Critical Drinker, talking about the movie Smile, which I'd heard of, but I haven't watched because I'm not a big
Mhm.
horror fan. And one of the complaints that he and the panel he was with were talking about is they never establish any restrictions on the power of this entity that is the bad thing in this movie, which is a problem because now you're like, okay, well, why are we bothering to root for the good guys because they have no chance?
Yeah, in contrast to that, the first movie that popped in my head would be something like Predator. and we get from the very beginning how its vision system works, how
Hmm.
it maneuvers through the trees, and it's so much more powerful than everybody. But we see the things that an hour later that Arnold uses to fight the thing in the
Hmm.
very beginning of the movie because we get the physics of the
Yep.
Predator from its own point of view.
Yep. Yeah. So we know that the good guy has the ability and the opportunity to triumph. It's just going to be really hard because the monster has more advantages, but it does have limitations. And so I think that's a big thing that's happening here of really showing, yeah, the light can win. Yes, the dark one is incredibly powerful, way more powerful than any one individual, even Rand with his unique connection to the creator and the pattern, but there are still limitations.
You know, it's funny because to go back to your, I hate that he put gender in here.
Mhm.
I'm reading this sentence over again, and I actually think he just inserted that because you could read
Yeah.
that sentence taking that spot out and it still be perfectly legible. I think he just inserted it. It's not even a comma or, anything. It's a separate thing. It's like he might as well have put it in parentheses. This was my
Yeah,
thought.
that's a good point. Because back to my point of Rand adjusting to this place, to this existential place and existential fight, it actually would have made sense for Jordan to insert it because the pronoun he makes a lot of sense and you can rationalize why you would put a masculine pronoun to an entity like the Dark One, but it does make more sense. And if his mind is starting to be able to wrap around these crazy existential thoughts, then it would make more sense for Jordan to just insert it and not comment on it because that would be his style. It's just no. Oh, did you catch that?
Mhm.
Rand is starting to understand the Dark One a little more. I think you may be right that Sanderson felt the need to insert that, but Jordan would have just left it to the reader.
Yeah, and I always wonder because Tor has a lot to do with this. And this is 20, what is it, 2014, 2012,
Yeah, something
uh
like that. If
20,
we look,
2013 first published. Okay,
okay.
so this is right in the height of this is Trayvon Martin right here.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is right in the height of when all of those words were absolutely being inserted into
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
And Tor might have had a memo. Hey, all the new stuff coming out, make sure you use these words. You kind of, you know, ambiguously gender or all of
Hmm.
these different things. And Sanderson probably had a memo and he said, I can't get this published if I don't do it, which I don't blame
Yeah.
Sanderson for on that.
And you've shown the graphs showing the major publications and their
Mhm.
use of certain words and how in 2012ish they go bloop.
Yep. Yeah.
There's this huge spike. Yeah.
Yeah, and all
So
these
might be a
companies
little
that
bit too.
have these financial backers like Tor would be, it just makes sense because it's just so obviously just inserted in there.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a part of a sentence that has no need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough yelling at clouds for these old men. Uh, sorry we're not making it further, but we do keep coming up against interesting stuff. Like we've said, it is just hard to get in a flow when you keep bouncing between points of view. But
Yeah, especially in this section, there was maybe a
mhm,
page and a half for any one perspective
yeah,
on everything we went through.
but we do keep encountering more substance than I remembered. Um, Not always good, but substance nonetheless. So, uh, I hope y'all are enjoying. I hope y'all are enjoying this reread or first read for isomorphic as much as I'm enjoying this. I haven't enjoyed a reread this much in a long time because of this group dynamic. Not just me and Sam here, but y'all's comments. So hey, pick up the slack. No comments on the last section on the
Yeah,
last
come on,
video we
Scott
posted.
ISO,
So
let's
get
go.
get with it so we can ramble even more by commenting on your comments and we will see y'all next week for more Wheel of Time, and this weekend we'll get back to the awfulness that is the
Well, it's the last weekend before
last weekend
before
before the
D-Day.
election.
Yeah.
So believe we'll ramble about something in that regard.
Well, I mean, did we talk about Trump interview yet on
No,
Rogan?
no.
No, we haven't talked that. JD is going to be he's filming it as we're filming ours. So we'll have JD on Rogan. Kamala gave unreasonable stipulations for Rogan to do it. She said fly to DC and I'm only going to do an hour when that's not how it works. She's the one trying to get votes,
Mm-hmm.
so it should be the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And also she made a statement at her rally last night that she was going to deport all the illegal aliens. So
What a racist.
yeah, what a racist. But also, I guess she's MAGA now. Trump keeps saying he's going to send her a MAGA hat. He really needs to now because she took the last step. She took the last step.
Yeah.
But Hinchcliffe jokes. Yeah, that's the October surprise. It's like if that's the best October surprise you got, then I'm sorry, man. At least Hillary had a fake Russia story. Come on, you can do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Well, uh, hopefully that will be the last weekend we have to talk about nonsense, but we all know that it's not going to end on election day. I would love to spend the rest of this calendar year just talking about football on Saturdays, but
Even if it
we
does
probably
end on
won't be
election
allowed to
day,
do
it
that.
doesn't end on election day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, we'll see y'all then.
All right, later.